Hey guys, this is Lifted Conscious, and today I'll be talking about how to write poetry and what are the benefits of writing poetry. And this is all from my own personal experience. I always get asked, how do I write poetry? How do I start? I don't even know what to write. I suck at it, blah blah blah. For a while, I used to host Poetry Tuesdays, which is a pretty big hashtag on Tuesdays on Twitter. So it's not really mine, but I use it for the purpose of getting non-poets to write poetry and send them to me. And what always used to happen would be people telling me, I can't really do this, or I really suck, but here, I tried. And they would usually send me these incredible pieces of poetry. And in my mind, I'm like, how does this person have no idea of the masterpiece they just created? And these are people that have never written poetry before. So I always thought it was really, really beautiful how such intricate poetry could come from somebody that doesn't think themselves as a poet. And it made me think a lot. So of course, I am a poet. To me, everything is poetry. So I tell you already, you are already a poet. You were a poet the moment you were born. Every day, you put things in words. You put abstract thoughts into words. You essentially make poetry with your mouth noises that make sense, and that's the reason why it's not looked at as poetry. In a way, I must call myself a poet so people don't think I am crazy for the things that I'm writing. Because when you're a poet, you have freedom to express beyond regular ways of understanding. So, it makes it much easier when you just call yourself a poet. Otherwise, people will probably just say, she's crazy. She doesn't know what she's talking about. To them, I'm talking about nothing. But to people that wish to understand beyond regular ways of understanding, there is much more to it that meets the eye. And I love encouraging people to write poetry because it has freed me from the attachments to words or to phrases or to ways of expressing myself and to ways of understanding, because meaning is created by two people, the person that's giving out the information and the person that is receiving it. Meaning is created in both of their minds in their own ways, and it comes together and it is what it is. Sometimes the manifestation is not met, sometimes it is. So how do we write poetry? It depends. Are you writing poetry to impress someone? Are you writing poetry because you're in a competition with other poets? Are you writing poetry because you're trying to feel worthy or get approval from people? Or are you writing poetry to free yourself? I guess ultimately the question would be, why are you living? Are you living to impress other people? Are you living because you're competing with your neighbor? Or are you living because you want to learn how to free yourself? And these same type of connections happen in life with a lot of things that we do. Poetry can free you in many ways, and I'm going to tell you how. So how do you write poetry? The best poetry you'll ever write is the poetry you write without trying to impress anybody. It's the poetry that you write in your own time, in private, and the poetry that you don't plan to show to anybody. It's the poetry where you spill your heart courageously and you capture a part of your depth on paper. Something so simple that you'll go back and remember that little part of you that you went through or passed by or experienced really quick in your abstract ways of thinking. So this is why we are poets. We fragment our abstract ways of thinking in order to communicate them to other people. Difference is, they make sense. And they only make sense because they fit our structure of understanding. They fit our structure of expressing each other. So this is the reason why people won't admit that everything they say is poetry. But if we speak like this to somebody, let's say in the 1800s, they'll be like, what is this person talking about? I am sure they spoke a bit different. Obviously, depends what part of the country and everything, part of the world. But essentially, for example, when we read old literature, it sounds like poetry in a way. Obviously, a lot of people could look at it like advanced wording or high vocabulary. But a lot of poets use high vocabulary. We use every tool that there is to paint a picture with our words. To me, words and concepts are colors. And I'm not attached to the colors. I'm not attached to words. So I have freed myself to use whatever word I need to describe what I really mean, because sometimes words are enough. So how do we write poetry? When we dare ourselves to write our side, outside and beyond our structural way of thinking and understanding. When we let it all out. When we print our soul on paper via ink. When we get vulnerable. When we reach depth. When our heart speaks. When it's no longer just our mind. And it's our heart speaking through our mind. We write poetry when we write in a way that we connect from heart to heart. And even though the words make no sense, people say, I get you. This is poetry. And just like all the other arts, they have been materialized in a way that I mean is that we seek entertainment out of our arts. So they're no longer just for expression. There's an element of entertainment, of considering the watcher. This art is all right. It's a beautiful art as well, and it's prominent in our world. But we must also use art to heal. Essentially, I think everything is art. Life is a piece of art. So we're using this life to heal, to shed layers of ego. We must come to the small picture and use our arts the same way. I'm not telling you go write so you can be the best poet alive, so you can try to compete with other poets. I'm telling you write so you can heal, so you can get to know yourself. Because when you print things on paper, you can go back and read them. To me, it's essentially a type of meditation. You focus on writing things exactly as they come out, without any status quo, without any organization, without any structure. You put it on paper as it comes, as rude and ugly, as dark as it is. You must accept all of yourself. This is how you write poetry. When you get vulnerable, when you let it out, when it is your heart writing and is no longer the pen. This is when people feel you. And yes, words that make sense are beautiful, they're pretty. This is also an art. But it's the art inside the structure. Free yourself beyond that structure. And what are the benefits of this? We become better at understanding other people because we became better at understanding ourselves. We are less hard on the words other people use or the words that we use. We promote having less guilt for the words that we use after we use them. We promote courage. And on top of that, we write beautiful pieces. We take pictures of the little moments of our life when we were struggling or when we were celebrating it. And we can look back at them and see, wow, this is where I was at before, and this is a beautiful thing of poetry. And this comes with journaling as well. But there's this element of poetry where you go wild. Where I want to talk about Nana walking down the street because it likes to fly through the sky of earth as I sit on a rock and figure out that all is one and I am no longer me because I can see myself in the eyes of other people. And who am I to try to make sense when I don't owe you any? When you can make sense all on your own because the power is within you and I and the rock that it isn't alive, but I'm still here talking even though I don't exist. And even though I'm not trying to make sense, I am saying so much while I'm saying so little. And sometimes you can say so little with saying so much. It depends how you look at it and what you want to do with the tools that you were given with all these beautiful colors. Whether it's this beautiful body that we were given, or the words that we're using, or the experiences that became embedded in the way that we live. It is all a piece of art. And when we free ourselves to experiment with all these possibilities beyond how we think we have to be. We discover something new, which is that we can be whoever we want. And you've been a poet since the day you were born. So I encourage you to go, grab a paper, sit down and write something crazy. And I already know that before it's on paper, it's already poetry. I already know. This is how I write poetry. And I've never thought of myself as someone that people will look at as a poet. But I am grateful that this has happened because I want to make poetry cool again. And not just because it should be a form of entertainment, but because it should be a form of healing. It is the power of meditative writing. Meditative writing, bringing yourself to the present moment, to the paper and the pen, and just focusing on writing everything ugly and everything pretty on paper. Fragment a little bit more of life so you can go back to it and get to know yourself better. So you can go back to it and celebrate where you have came from. There to be more that you have thought yourself to be. There to be more that you've been told to be. There to be more than you think that you have to be. This little body cannot carry the immensity that you are. So go try to write some poetry and send it to me at liftedconscious.com. Take care of yourself.